What if I told you we could be one generation away from solving the world's biggest problems? And what if I told you that you have the power to be a major contributor to creating a butterfly effect right here today? My name is Vivian Glyck, and I'm the founder of Just Like My Child Foundation. In May of 2006, I found myself at a small health clinic in rural Uganda. The very first night I was there, the electricity went out, the water pump stopped working, and the Ugandan nuns who run the clinic made sure that malarial mosquitoes were kept out of my little room by shutting all the windows and doors and tucking me in bed under a mosquito net. There I lay in the sweltering African night, ruminating on what had brought me there to begin with. You see, almost 3 years earlier, I had become a mother. It was one of the most terrifying moments of my life. I couldn't seem to fathom the miracle of life where I didn't have to do much besides sleep and eat, and out would come a healthy baby. But on August 1, 2002, when Zach was born and the doctor lifted this fully formed, slimy baby over the surgical sheet, the first thing I thought was, oh my gosh, it's a whole human being with arms, legs, parts, everything intact. And it was as though I saw for the first time the value of one life, the preciousness of one beating heart. And as my son grew, I became painfully aware of the children whose lives are snuffed out every day because of poverty, disease, neglect, and a world that sometimes just doesn't seem to care. How could it be that every 30 seconds a child was dying as a result of a mosquito bite? Or that 12 million children had been orphaned by the AIDS epidemic, and nearly 20 million people had died in Africa as a result of that pandemic. And why, oh why, were we hearing more on the nightly news about whether Britney Spears was wearing underwear than about these devastating, heartbreaking statistics? I had 2 subsequent miscarriages after Zach's birth. But the inner message that I kept getting was that instead of having one more child, I wanted to have 10,000 kids. Kids who were just like my child, yet where they were born was determining whether they live or die. And so I did the next right thing. After some research and a pure stroke of luck, I ended up in Uganda at this very small clinic where there were no doctors, no AIDS treatment, where the HIV rate in the population was nearly 30%. Women were dying in childbirth and injustices abounded. That very first night at the clinic in Uganda, as I lay covered in my own sweat under that bed net in the pitch black, I listened to the screams of a woman throughout the night. The hairs on the back of my neck shot up, and I felt a surge of panic in my gut. In the morning, the nuns who run the hospital brought me little baby Christina. And it turned out that the screams I had heard throughout the night were those of Christina's grandmother as she watched her daughter's life slip away while giving birth to baby Christina. I didn't know it yet, but right then and there, I was witnessing the microcosm in the macrocosm. Christina's mother lived in extreme poverty, lacked education, and was forced to marry a much older man. It happens all the time. She had no prenatal care and was at high risk for death because of her young age. With her death, she left behind an even more vulnerable baby girl and an uneducated grandmother who couldn't properly care for Christina, setting off a disastrous cycle of poverty for the baby. And so we did the next right thing, paid for Christina's baby formula, made sure she had clothing, and here she is a year later. She was so loved and cared for by the sisters at the clinic that they barely put her down during her first year of life, and she ended up with some pretty envious thighs. Baby Christina survived, but she was the exception. As we started to work in Uganda, we saw similar scenarios play out over and over. All the while, we were doing the next right thing, working hand in hand with the communities. We built the clinic into a thriving teaching hospital. Together with parents and teachers, we built 27 school structures, partnered with Heifer International on microenterprise programs, and much more. One day, we were working with a community that had asked us to help rebuild a school building because the roof had literally caved into the classroom. We had brought a girls' empowerment coach in to start addressing some issues, and she could sense that something was deeply disturbing the girls. So she took them outside, away from where adults could hear, and she explained to them what sexual abuse was. And then she asked them to raise their hands if they had ever experienced this type of violence. And out of a group of about 19 girls, every single girl raised her hand. And I looked at that group of girls and I knew that this was a systemic problem, a problem that required a systemic solution, a solution that was a complete reset. Because look at these statistics. In Uganda alone, 77% of reported child abuse is rape of the girl child. 50% of girls drop out of school before the age of 15, and complications from pregnancy and childbirth are the leading cause of death for teenage girls. Most new HIV infections are in girls under the age of 18 because older men are preying on these younger girls. And 40 to 50% of girls marry before age 18 and start having babies. And so I thought to myself, what if, rather than doing all of these things, we could put the voice inside the girl and make sure she knows what her rights are, what her power is, how to have agency over her own body, and find her voice so she can stand up for herself, all the while educating the community, parents, teachers, stakeholders on why it's in their best interest to protect the girl child and keep her in school. So we created something we call Girl Power Project System in a Box, a 60-hour training that's a replicable, transportable program that teaches girls what their rights are, how their body works, what the law of the land is, and how to empower other girls, creating a type of social vaccine that provides herd immunity from harmful cultural practices that have held girls back for years. You can do a lot of things to make a difference in the fate of the planet, but I can tell you after doing this work for 13 years that if you don't give a girl authority over what happens to her body and with her uterus, the whole world suffers. In just 8 years with limited resources, 200,000 Ugandans in 76 communities have been positively impacted. But why does this matter for girls around the world? How can this idea create a butterfly effect that in turn transforms the world's biggest problems? Because there are 100 million girls around the world just like Christina who are out of school and are at high risk for all of the obstacles and dangers that Christina's mother faced. And here's just some of what can happen on a global scale if we change that. Educated women reinvest 90% of their income into their families, while men, reinvest only 30 to 40%. A girl who completes basic education is far less likely to contract HIV/AIDS. And when a girl has 7 or more years of education, she marries 4 years later and has 2.2 fewer children. We don't know where that 0.2 comes from, but it's in the statistics. Every additional year of primary school boosts the girls' eventual wages, and even more in secondary school. And here's the big thing. The introduction of family planning can dramatically impact the climate health of the planet. Why? Because educated women have fewer but healthier children and are active in maintaining their own reproductive health. The bottom line is that doing everything possible to empower girls will help reduce the doubling of the population that's slated on the horizon of many countries. The environmental impact of reducing population growth is tremendous. But don't just take it from me. Listen to Bill and Melinda Gates. The world could get an extra U.S. economy's worth of income by making one simple change, and that's educating girls. But how do we know that Girl Power Project works to impact these specific issues? Because we've already done it. In 2 separate independent peer-reviewed studies, one conducted by Texas A&M University, the results confirmed that not only were thousands of girls personally empowered to change their behavior and make different choices, but the perception of the value of the girl child was dramatically elevated in the eyes of parents, teachers, police, healthcare workers, and communities. But here's what I just love. It's how did the girl change internally? Without girl power, I wouldn't have known that my body belongs to me. I learned that school is important for me to achieve my goals through a good career. I'm now counseling other girls on the importance of staying in school. That social vaccine is so important. I like to say that I started out a bleeding heart, and now I, along with our whole organization, have become scientists focused on data about the changes in girls and their outcomes that we're documenting about the effects of Girl Power Project. The results are so positive that our dream has been to take girl power around the world because let's face it, Ugandan girls are not the only ones who need Girl Power Project. We're so excited. We've begun doing work in the Great Sioux Nation in South Dakota, and in Rishikesh, India, we're doing a pilot program there as well. So this is all great, and you don't have to become a Girl Power Project facilitator in order to transform the world one girl at a time. I told you at the beginning that you can be part of this change, beginning here today, just by doing the next right thing. Because in my mind, this should be like a global public health initiative we can all participate in, like stop smoking or wear a seatbelt, limit greenhouse gases. In a very short period of time, keep girls in school and give them voice over what happens to their bodies and their futures changes the planet, period. I'd like to share quickly some of the principles of feminine power that are behind the theory of change that Girl Power Project is built on, and it's the way that women use their power. Number 1, power within. It's what a woman's or girl's sense of self-worth, self-knowledge, and self-confidence is all about. If she doesn't have that inner confidence, she won't be able to stand up for herself. Power with, it's that collaborative huddle power that women have, their way of collaborating together in order to move very, very important initiatives forward. And then there's power too, which is a woman or girl's ability to act and to shape her life, to hold positions of power, to demand a seat at the table. So here are 5 things that you can do with this knowledge starting today. Number 1, power within. Got empowerment? Pass it on. What would you do if you were 1% more courageous? What would you do if you could pass that courage on to a girl? Your empowerment, where you know how to speak your mind, know how to access resources, know your legal and human rights, is an asset that maybe the girl working behind the counter at the 7-Eleven just doesn't have. Pay attention. Is there a girl you can lend your voice to today who has been taught to diminish her own? Help amplify her voice. 2, one of the most impactful things that you can do for an adolescent girl is to become a mentor, either formally or informally. Google how to be a great mentor to a girl. There are great programs out there like Boys and Girls Club, and there are lots of great resources. And here's a tip. Rather than telling her that she's pretty or asking her if she has a boyfriend, ask her what she's reading or what her favorite subject is and why. Power with, you can be part of this global solution by right now walking out of here with a consciousness that you know that empowering women and girls is the single most important thing that you can do for your own survival on the planet. Just this shift in awareness will start changing your behavior, what you pay attention to, and what you invest your time in. Power 2. Sponsor a girl to receive an education. As you can see, nothing makes as big a difference as eliminating the obstacles that keep a girl from staying in school. There are lots of resources available through a simple Google search to sponsor a girl in the U.S. or in the developing world. Power 2. Recognize the critical need to reshape systems and policies that sustain gender inequities and other types of discrimination. We all have a role to play in changing the look of leadership in our world. But here's the thing. I was just a mom who couldn't bear to see a child miss out on her potential. I know that there's something that's burning inside of you, a passion that's calling you to make a difference, something that's disturbing you about the world. It's keeping you up in the middle of the night, but you don't know what to do. You don't need to have a big plan or a massive movement. You just need to do the next right thing. Maybe it's learning about becoming a mentor. Maybe it's writing that song that has a message of hope and healing. Maybe it's learning to meditate so that your energy becomes the change you wish to see. Whatever your passion is, whatever is calling you, take the one step. Do the next right thing. You can and will make a difference that can grow into a movement that transforms the world.